Okay, so here we are, the last three chapters of We the Living, and a lot going on. I didn't play it up in my post about what to talk about, but we probably should just at least briefly address that funeral, the funeral of Andre. Uh, and I was wondering if you I know what my reaction was, but I'm curious about your reaction to Andre's funeral.
Um, there was a kind of nobility in it. Rand's commentary throughout the book, the commentary about what she herself, as author, thinks has been sort of muted. But there's definitely a sense of this is a kind of hero's funeral, and um, dignity and respect. And they're all playing the International now, and I had never heard it. So I looked at it on YouTube. It's very Russian, I would say. Um, to such a
Okay,
and
just a second. Is somebody got something playing in the background? Because I'm picking up a lot of static again. Got a radio or something going on?
no, not myself, no.
Nobody?
Nope.
Are you hearing other people talking? Or is it's not just me this time? All right, well, I'm going to keep trying to record and see what the deal is. Okay, so Charles, you thought it was noble. Adele, what about you?
I can definitely see that it was an attempt to make it seem heroic and noble, but I think that that's just the outward appearance of everything, how nothing is really real in Soviet Russia, that it's all just about show. None of it has any sort of structure beneath it. And I think we can see that in the way that people are talking throughout the whole thing. They're just worried about their day-to-day lives. They're annoyed at having this obligation funeral to attend.
Yes.
Right.
Ron? Okay.
I think it was a lot to do about nothing. I mean, we know that Andre was on the verge of being dismissed from the party. We know that they had very little respect for him. We know that they know he was the rat that gave up the Marinov and Pavel in trying to bait and switch in terms of the food scam that was going on. And so I think they had very little respect for Andre, but I think they wanted to present to the public that he was this hero of which they had no respect for or were ready to kick to the curb, and they just discarded him and tried to make it look like he was a lot more than what they really thought of him.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. All that is true. However, the context was that actually he had committed suicide. The one noble thing that he had going for him was a love for Kira, and
Yeah.
out of love for Kira, he gave up everything, including the party.
Charles, I think in the theme of this book, and it's kind of been that way all along,
Yeah.
the theme of this book to me is that the collective kills you one way or another.
Yes.
And Lindsay made a comment to me earlier about the fact that she felt that, and this is commenting way ahead to the end of it, but she felt that both Andre and Kira went out much better than anyone else did, in terms of the fact that no way was Rand ever going to allow anyone to escape the collectivism, and either you killed yourself or you died, and it was going to kill you one way or another. It either killed you by taking away your will to live, or it killed you because you were dead. But either way, you're dead. And so I think that Andre's killing himself is probably a more noble way to go out of this whole deal was to try to live in it and survive.
Dead on the inside or dead on the outside. Either way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You're dead either way. And I think what turned Andre to suicide was that he realized that all the things through this book that he's felt was the right thing to do, to support the collective and to be part of it and to honor it and to try to convert people to it, was doing nothing but destroying other people's lives and taking away their will to live. And I think that Kira had a lot to do with turning Andre's eyes to the fact that the whole deal is about yourself and not about others. And not to try to make everyone do what you want them to do, but do what you want to do. And when Andre realized that, he realized the only thing he could do was take himself out.
I agree with you. I thought this funeral was just obscene. It was.
Yeah.
First of all, it had this. While it was stately, I'll give you that, Charles. I think it was, but that stateliness had nothing to do with Andre. It had nothing to do with honoring someone they thought, oh, we really misunderstood him. He was a great guy. Why did we let this happen? No, this was one, they were glad he was gone. He was just in the way. Nobody cared about him in the least. And they were just using it, exploiting it for political gain. So I thought it was just like the definition of obscenity. And Victor's speech too, where and he just says it as Victor so often did. But one man means nothing in the face of the mighty proletarian collective, no matter how worthy his achievements. And so, really, I think this funeral was a memorial to that, and not to Andre, at least.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. When I was reading it the whole time, I was just thinking Andre would have hated this, either before his sort of realization about what the party became. So he wouldn't have liked it because it was so ostentatious. It wasn't about furthering the cause, or after his sort of reversal on his positions, because then it's just this system that he doesn't believe in anymore, and these two people whom he hates more than anybody else speaking for him.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about him at all.
He's lucky he's dead.
Yeah, absolutely. He's lucky he's dead, or he would have killed them all.
Feeling in the grave, though.
You reminded me of the counterpoint between these people. Even for the party, you're second rate. You don't really have much standing. These minor characters talking in counterpoint to the whole funeral procession about ridiculous, commonplace, events, concrete events, which have virtually nothing to do with the stateliness, as you point out, of the whole funeral. And the whole thing it's seen as sort of, I guess in a way you would say Rand sort of inverts the whole thing and makes you see just how ridiculous it is.
And then Kira is there as
background.
Right. And Sonia gets in there and has to cut her one last time. Says, "I'm surprised you're here," right? But then that last line in chapter 15, she wondered whether she had killed him or the revolution had, or both. So we have this is terrible pain, I think, that Kira is undergoing at this time, and that is clear. And if anybody feels anything, if there's anything to redeem this moment, it would be Kira, I think.
Yeah, I think Kira realized that what she's done to Andre is what did him in. I think she realized that her lecture to him before he went and spoke to his patriots opened his eyes for the last time, and the fact that what the collective has done to everyone around them is killing them all.
Yes, yes. It's just an awful state of affairs, and the absolute indifference of everybody else who's involved. I just found.
Yeah, I mean, of all people to get up and speak, Pavel. Really?
Really plan your own.
He who thinks if he doesn't speak, he's going to get blackmailed by notes of people that Andre planted before, which he didn't do, but planted before he was dead, is going to come back and he'll end up in front of a firing squad. So here's Pavel.
Right, then they're going to bury him real deep, just in case.
Yeah. More than just in a pile of snow.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. So we have, okay, so there's one death, and now we've got, basically, we've got two more, right? Now in the next chapter, we have Leo. So
Well, he's dead, but he's dead just with Mornov's girl.
right, he's just
Which he might as well be dead. I mean,
with the living dead. Right.
Yeah, the living dead.
Yeah. A pretty tough chapter, don't you think?
Yeah.
Predictable, I think.
Yeah, predictable. Yes. I missed my good bottle of vodka. Actually, finished. I read ahead actually about 10 days ago.
Okay.
Because I do remember the ending. But it was very hard to take. And that's about all I can say. One thing I would say is that not at the ending, but in the meantime, she's having this argument after the funeral. She's having this argument with her parents that she wants to go, that she wants to try to get out of Russia, and she almost had her chance closer to the beginning of the book when she was going to go with Andre on the boat and ran into Leo. So she tries again to see if that's available, and it's quite expensive. And so she winds up trying to get onto the train to get out. And,
Well, she tries to get a passport.
right.
I mean, she tries to get an out-of-country passport,
Right. Well,
which she fails at.
it's still after Leo breaks up with her. Can we talk about that, or it's just too much to take?
Oh, I think that Leo running off with Mornov's lady
Well, let's talk about how he
is classic Leo. And that's classic Leo because Leo's always looking for the easy way out. I mean, he's always looking for what's good for Leo and not what's good for others. And so he bails on Kira even though he loves her. We know he does, but he says he doesn't. And he bails on her to run off with Mornov's gal. And because she is promising him, you know, Mornov gets ostracized to the Crimea by the party and leaves his lady behind. And so his lady takes up Leo because she thinks that she can't live alone. I mean, and Leo sees it as a way out.
And I remember the first time that I read that now, because I remember that's the second time around. And all this passion and lust and devotion, everything like that. And it ends just very, very coldly. And this, I don't know, maybe this is a European thing, but I have noticed this. I had a lot of Swedish, and in my freshman year at school, I was at a small private college, and there were a lot of Swedes and people from Switzerland and Eastern Europe, and it seemed like they would have these torrid affairs with some of the local California girls on campus, and then it would just be goodbye.
Well,
It just sort of seemed that this was, but it was very, very real the way it happened, and no rhyme or reason for it. It's just, well,
I don't know. I think we can find some rhyme and reason to it. So when Leo he comes in, she's come home from the funeral, right? And he pretty much he attacks her.
Yeah.
He attacks her and he calls her a little bitch, right? And
Basically calls her a whore.
well, yeah, and he yells at her. He just savagely attacks her. Right, Adele? I think there's yeah. And what I think is interesting about the way that Rand wrote it is that after he yells at her for what he claims that she's done, right? Not really knowing the whole story, but after he yells at her, it's only after that that he says to her that, well, actually, I'd made up my mind to dump you 3 days ago. Even before I knew this. So there's
Right.
something particularly savage. But I do think, Adele, I think that one thing he's unleashing here is his own self-loathing. He's unleashing this on her. What do you think?
Yeah, he knows what he could have been with Kira if they'd been in a different place in a different time. And yeah, he doesn't have any self-esteem anymore. He's lost all of his self-respect, so he figures, why not?
yeah.
I want to just venture something about Leo, and in particular in the context of the book. You know, it's entirely possible that this is what Leo is, and that he would have, again, as we said, he would have just reached the end of the line with Kira, and let her go like this anyway. But I think that one reason it's so tragic, and Charles, you mentioned that with your friends, that it might have just been sort of a thing to do. It would have been a pastime, and an intense and exciting pastime. And so it's interesting to me, one, the way Kira reacts, because she does not punish, even though Leo is vicious with her. She doesn't punish him. So she stays true to her own affection. She saw something, she loved it, she loved him, and she keeps that with her. She does not disavow her love or herself, because she would have to say, well, there was something wrong with me then, and there isn't. But I also just think it's kind of part of the context of nobody having to wait out, in that she could have survived this in another world.
She never argues her own case to him, and she doesn't explain why she was a quote-unquote whore, and that it had nothing to do.
At this point, I don't know, Adele. I'm not sure I would either. What do you think?
But at this point, it's none of his damn business.
Well, sure, but yeah.
Marilyn, I don't know. I think Leo, if he hadn't got arrested, it would be status quo. And if Andre hadn't gone out of his way to get him released, it would be status quo, except he'd be standing in front of a firing squad. So
Yeah.
I don't think Leo, at this point in the book, I think Leo's lost his will or his desire to live. I mean, he's just looking for an easy way out. Because at the beginning of the book, Leo was a strong, you know, knew all about himself and was a companion to Kira, and that's part of the reason she fell in love with him, because he felt the same way that she did, that it was all about self and not about collective. And at the end of the book, Leo feels it's all about collective and not about himself anymore, and he's just looking for an easy way out.
Mm-hmm. Adele,
So he piles on with Mornov's lady. I mean, what better way out? She's got tons of money, you know, she'll take care of him, and he'll be the whore.
Definitely. Adele?
I think that yeah, Leo knows that he's lost, and Kira knows that he's lost too. She's finally given up. She knows he's beyond saving at this point, and she doesn't tell him why she did what she did out of respect for herself, I think. She doesn't want him to stay with her out of some sort of sense of obligation.
Mm-hmm.
And she knows that it wouldn't be worth it anyway, because he's not the same person. He's gone.
Yeah. And you're right, Ron, that he has been berating himself all along about being a gigolo, and now he's just basically saying, well, in fact, that is. And then
That's what I do.
It's so sweet. She says, but at least you could have sold yourself to a young, pretty woman.
Well, yeah, but young, pretty women may not have as much money as Mornov's wife. So, you know, you follow the money.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible though. I just felt like, Matt, it was just punch after punch in terms of this terrible parting. And then he tries to offer her money. Remember, he says, here, I don't have a lot of money, but here, take this. But to her credit, she doesn't. She just says that's it. It's over. And then there's that interesting line at the end, and he says, then he gets a little bit. Well, we have their last words, right? Or not last, but he says, "Oh, have you nothing to say?" He says to her, right? I'm on page 468. She says, "Only this, Leo. It was I against 150 million people. I lost." Right?
Yeah.
And then he says, and this I find just telling and a little manipulative. He says, Kira, you loved me once, didn't you? So he's still asking her to support him and to sort of reflect, to see. He's still asking him to see who he was at that moment, right? But of course, she lets him know at that point that what the deal is. And she says, well, when a person dies, one does not stop loving him, does one? So I think she's telling him, yes, of course I loved you, but you are a dead man. And that is all I see right now.
Which is too bad. I mean, it kind of sets us up for the next chapter, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. So now we've had two deaths, basically.
Yeah. Well, one dead and one dead living, but
one morally dead person.
Yeah.
But what did you think? I thought that Kira was a complete hero in this situation. Just a very noble, a person who is true to herself. Did you?
Yeah, I would agree, Marilyn. I think Kira packs up her stuff and leaves. You know, she doesn't need help with her suitcase. She doesn't need help down the stairs. She doesn't need help finding a ride. She manages to go and apply for a passport and wait the 3 weeks with her sister and sleep on the floor and do all the things that she needs to do to try to make it right with herself, and ends up being rejected and moves on. And next chapter.
Yeah, she maintains her dignity throughout the whole thing. She's strong, and she she won't become that kind of person who falls apart. And I think she'll always love Leo. She'll always love who he was when she met him. She'll always love the concept of what he could have been, the sort of idealized version of him. But now she can see it as in the past, as in it's dead. There's no chance of it ever happening. So she can give up gracefully with dignity.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I think she still loves him, but I think that she is, her self-esteem is intact, and it's an interesting dynamic here because she doesn't blame him. She doesn't tell him, you owe me. How could you do this to me? Wait, you're not getting out of here unless you give me this, and this, right? There's no vindictiveness. There's no pity though either. She doesn't say, oh, poor Leo. She does cut him off at the end, and that is that. But I found it a fascinating exit from the relationship, just beautiful, sublime, even in the way he handles herself.
Well, I think she looked at Leo and said, "You made your own bed. Now you got to lay in it, and it's time to move on for me because I still have my feelings about myself, and you really don't matter to me anymore."
Charles, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that there's a finality to that whole thing that frees her in a way to make the attempt to leave, which is something that she had always put on the back burner, but would have chosen to do almost from the beginning.
Yeah.
So this is the great adventure now, and so the chapter after that is kind of like the bridge between the past and infinite mortality. See, interestingly enough, when I was reading that part where she's on the train, I had, by happenstance, Ravi Shankar playing. And it seemed like perfect music because sitar music and Indian music is almost like an eternal now. A bridge between one life to whatever, maybe the finale. And it just caught perfectly the mood that Rand was setting, in the sense of she's get along, go along, she's almost relaxed and bribing people and getting things done that way. Until she comes to, where is it, Austria?
She's trying to get to Latvia. I know.
Yeah. So it's like a pause, but it's like a very meaningful pause in the action and in the mood.
Yeah.
And you know that the ending will not be good.
It's unfortunate, that ending. Although I like what you brought up about that freeing her, and I've been thinking about this all week. In other circumstances, as I said, I think Leo probably would have broken up with her anyway. If they lived someplace else. But what I was thinking about is how if they were in different circumstances, if she would have stayed with Leo as long as she did. And I can't decide. I don't know if he acted the same way. Of course, then nothing would be the same, obviously. But it's interesting to me that if she would have, I'm not saying she wouldn't have not stopped loving him, but I'm wondering if she would have said, "This is not going to be. I can't do this anymore." I don't have the answer. It just made me think about it. In terms of,
You can love someone and at the same time it's not good for you. And it wasn't. We can argue about whether it was good for Kira or not to love Leo as passionately as she did, but I think at the end of the day, what she really loved was life itself. And Leo didn't. Leo did not love his life. He loved Kira, but not well. So.
Yeah.
I think, Marilyn, and Charles, that Leo, if Kira had stayed with Leo, just speculate for a second, if she had stayed with him, and I think that all the way through the book, she pretty much loved him unconditionally. I mean, she stuck with him no matter what. I mean, through his tuberculosis and through the storefront property and trying to convince him not to, and that he hung in there with him regardless of what he did or what he should have or shouldn't have done. And even when he was arrested, she was there for Leo. I mean, that's was her motive, to try to get him freed or to try to get him out. So if they had stayed together, I think she probably would have stuck in there with him until it dawned on her that maybe huddling over the stove on the table wasn't her choice in life, or she found another route to escape. But I think that there's a difference between love and unconditional love. And I think that she loved Leo unconditionally. No matter what he did, she was in love with him. And no matter what Kira did, Leo could come and go. He loved her in the sense of the word, but he really wasn't dedicated or unconditionally dedicated to Kira.
Right.
And I think that Leo loved himself more than he loved Kira. He loved what he could do for himself and not necessarily for others.
That's a real good point. You can love unconditionally someone who doesn't know that concept and doesn't love you as much as you love them and that sort of thing. So it's they want to set the rules, and I think that's Leo and Kira. She loved him passionately, but she loved life itself passionately.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Charles.
Well, see, I don't see it as unconditional. And that's why I think she can leave him at the end. See, I think all the while she thinks he deserves it. Now, unfortunately, they're in a situation where he can't demonstrate that fully, whether he does. So she does have this sense of potential about him that she loves. So that's why I was wondering, if they were in a free society, if it turned out that Leo was actually just this and doesn't pan out as being the potential that she thinks, I think she would have left him also. But here, It's only when she asks him those questions about, and she basically she makes him tell her that he is choosing this route over this route. I'm choosing this life over this life. And once he tells her that, then she sees that he does not deserve that love anymore.
Right.
So again, I don't think it's unconditional. I think it's stretched out as long as it is, Ron, because he doesn't have, his potential is always there, and he doesn't have the chance to realize it. And so I don't know. I mean, but once she tells him, no, look, I'm going to choose to go with this woman, then she's done. She loves what she knew, the Leo she knew, but now this is not that Leo anymore.
Right.
Adele, do you want to add anything to that?
I agree with that. It's the Leo that he could have been is gone. He's dead. He's dead to her, basically. He's been sucked in by the system, and he won't escape, and she can let it go now. I think that's why she's so in this sort of like Zen state that you were talking about, Charles, in the last chapters, that she's not really processing anything, she's not feeling anything, she's just acting, kind of like she has PTSD or just the kind of feelings you have when you lose someone you love, someone close to you. She's just getting through. She's trying not to feel anything.
Yeah. All right, let's go to that chapter. Go ahead, Charles. She's on the train, right? And You have the background music. I find that really interesting.
Well, that, just by happenstance, but I just thought I could visualize the scene that she's writing. I mean, I could just feel the emotions perfectly because of that music. And like I said, it's like being stuck in place, and you're not going anywhere. That's good in a way because you know where the trail is going to lead, but you're not suffering. You're just like Adele puts it in kind of a Zen mode.
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is what she's thinking about. At 2 o'clock in the morning when the lights are turned out, she's still thinking about Leo. And when the thing that happens to her, this isn't a spoiler for anyone, is it? Are we all read to?
Yeah, right to the end.
Okay, when Ivan Ivanov just fires some shots to say he did his job, he didn't really think he was going to hit a person. What does she say out loud? She says his name, Leo, Leo, Leo.
Yeah.
It's very, very strong and powerful love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you pointed out, if this had all taken place in a bourgeois liberal society without Lenin or Stalin or gulags to worry about, the arc of the relationship would have been very, very different. Although I probably would have been very, very uninteresting to Rand for that reason. Because the whole idea is that collectivism crushes the individual.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what she felt. And I find the last line, the last sentence of the book, amazingly hopeful. Is that even in the throes of death, she can still look upon it as an adventure that was part of life.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up about Leo because I think that's a wonderful passage. Because I mean, just think about it. Okay, you've gone through this whole ordeal, right? And now there she is. She's dressed in the wedding gown and the whole thing, right? So there she is, the virgin out in the snow, and she's gone this far, and she's shot. She's laying on the ground. I just
Well, she's probably 100 yards from freedom. I mean,
if you think of all the things that could go through your head at that moment, right? But this is what goes through Kira's. And the first she says Leo, and then she repeats it again, Leo, Leo, Leo. And here's what Rand says. She was calling him the Leo that could have been, that would have been had he lived there where she was going, across the border. There in that world, across the border, a life was waiting for her to which she had been faithful to her every living hour. So she has that mental image. She has that vision that she's never betrayed, and it took the shape of Leo for her. And I think she calls out then because she is calling out for that best, that holiest thing that she had worshipped in her life.
And note the symbolism of the wedding dress.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
Very, very beautifully done. I had forgotten all about that. All I remembered was that she was shot and it really sucked.
Yeah, I know.
In searching for a streaming, by the way, copy of We the Living, I ran, you don't get very far until you start running into Night of the Living Dead, Night of the Living Dead 2, Night of the Living Dead 3. She invested a great deal of emotional power that I was very, very far too callow to appreciate it at the time that I wrote it, that I read it, because I was looking for a, inspiring Ayn Rand novel. I hadn't read this one before. I was expecting like a Fountainhead in Russia. No, there's no Fountainhead in
There's
Russia.
no fountainhead in Russia, and that is the moral of this
No.
story.
No Gulch in Russia either. It like McCann said, Professor McCann said it. It is ran for adults. That this is what happens when you have an unfree society.
Mhm.
John Galt would probably have been living underground or shot himself. And now, God knows how many years later, one likes to think she would have been pleased that there isn't a Soviet Union anymore. And that those things are gone. And a lot of those things anyway are gone from where she grew up. So.
All I can think of is that the guy that shot her must have been a hell of a shot, because he shot her in the chest and she was lying on the ground. So
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but obviously it did.
I was thinking of The Good Soldier Wojciech, which you probably didn't read, but where he's sort of a semi-competent, partly incompetent soldier, just goes along, gets along, and so he just the minimal required, and it was basically a lampoon of Prussian family values, and I could see that happening, but yeah, it would have been a very lucky shot, because he wouldn't have been able to see her. But
Just a brute. He's too lazy to even go over and see if he did
Yeah.
hit her, right? So she has to bleed to death in the snow. He's not somebody who has who would, I think, even seeing Kira recognize what she is, because he is himself. He himself is nearly an animal, I think, the way Rand describes him. And I think he just looks at everything that way, and he just shot her like you would an animal in the. He says that maybe it was a rabbit, right?
yeah, that's you got a concrete bound guy
He
just
wasn't even protecting anything, is what I'm saying. There was nothing noble in that shot. It was
just wanted to obey orders and not have to think about anything, and bang bang, to see there, I've done it. I didn't see anything, and actually he hit something, and probably never knew it. And it's that kind of counterpoint for which Rand is famous.
Mhm.
Lindsay's comment is that Rand has this. She found the ending very poetic, and she found it true to form for Rand that she always ends up killing the hero. And that was Lindsay's comment. She said Rand is notorious for killing the hero at the end of the book, and regardless of what book Lindsay's read of Rand's, someone at the end always dies, either spiritually or physically or mentally or whatever. There's death involved in the end of every book.
Well, Howard Rourke is.
So Lindsay wasn't surprised by the end, and it would have been just as easy for Rand to let her go free. But I think in the theme of the book, that collectivism kills no matter who you are or what you do, it would have been contrary to Rand's belief to let Kira get across the border to freedom. And it would have been a much happier ending, but certainly not. It would have made, I think it would have made Kira an exception to the rule, and I don't think that's what Rand had in mind.
Mhm.
And in fact, the interesting point that and the style of writing, fiction writing in Soviet Russia, and I have nothing no basis on which myself to know whether this is true or not. But some people have said that it was very much like Rand's writing was very much like Soviet realism. But the difference is, from what I understand about Soviet realist fiction, is that while the heroes were very heroic by Soviet standards, it always ended up the same. Whereas the non-party members or the evil bourgeois capitalists wound up getting killed, and the wonderfully wonderful Soviet heroes always carried the day. A bit creepy. And this isn't the Rand story arc by any means. She may have been influenced by some Soviet realist writings, but I don't think you could draw much of a comparison between the two of them. Certainly no Soviet realist writings ever championed capitalism, rational self-interest, and so forth. It was always in service of a good party member versus a dead one.
So is this a happy ending? That's what I want to, that's my question.
I think it's happy for Kira.
Yeah, to talk about life's possibility, how wonderful life is and life's possibilities, that's an ending of hope. And that's Kira dying with a smile on her face. Is that she lived, she loved, and
She conquered.
Right, and she almost succeeded in the journey.
She tried the journey. She made it. She died fine. Adele, what do you think?
I agree. I think it's bittersweet. Of course, it's tragic that she didn't make it to another country where she could really put her skills and her spirit to use to make something, to do something with her life. But she did make it to freedom. Now she's free. She's out of there. She escaped.
Yeah. And again, with the wedding gown, right? She gets out intact. She never does betray herself. She's true to her love. She's true to who she is. She's true to her vision of freedom, of what life can be. I think it's really beautiful.
Do you think anyone ever finds her in the snow until spring? I mean, do you think the guy at the border will ever go out and see if he actually killed somebody? I mean, she's going to lay in the snow and
Well, I was reading something just recently about that time. And this was actually about the famines in Ukraine. But apparently, the sight of dead bodies on the side of the road or anywhere else was fairly commonplace during this period of time, because people were just dying. They didn't have enough to eat. They didn't have enough to keep them warm. They couldn't get the basic things that they need, and they were dying in the streets. So I think it's entirely possible. I mean, I think about how long was it before they found Andre, who had died in his apartment. So unfortunately, and that's another one of the brutal aspects of this novel, is that I think, as I said, the person who shot, or anybody who has any ethics at all, if you had shot at something, then you are bound to go and see, did I hit something? Was it the right thing? Could I have?
Yeah.
And this person just doesn't even have that level of initiative or care about anything.
Right, doesn't care. He can't see it. For all he knows, it's some guy trying to cross that is supposed to be shot anyway. So, what the hell? Well, I mean, I can see this attitude. Back in the 70s, when I was going to Europe with my parents, Europe and Britain, quite frequently, we crossed the border. And oftentimes you had your passport ready, and 9 times out of 10, they didn't even want to check your passport. You would just go, and you'd go through.
Hmm.
And 90% of the time, I can't imagine that happening now. But that was the reality back then.
Hmm.
Yeah, back then they'd let you in, but they may not let you out.
Well, my dad was German, so that was a benefit, going through Austria, Hungary, and so forth. When we went to England, my Yorkshire woman mum basically did all the talking and the relating, and they would, if they got hostile in the UK, it was usually looking at my father, who looked like something out of a photo with Kaiser Wilhelm or something like that. It was very, very Teutonic. Okay. And they would even, some of the ladies at the travel agencies would just look at him and just start reacting to his appearance and start getting really hostile.
One last thing, because we're running out of time, but I just want to go again, because I think in terms of writing, in terms of plot device, and that the wedding gown is really well done. Not just for the symbolism, but do you remember where that wedding gown came into the novel?
Her mother sold it to her.
Right. Do you remember that? Yeah. So it was something that Kira took and just kind of tucked away, right? And so it was a wonderful way that I think that Rand brought that into the novel so that it would be there at the end when she needed it. I also thought, I was trying to think, just the whole idea of her thinking that clearly about what she was doing. I need to wear white because I'm going to be in the snow. But the one last thing then too with the wedding gown and the whole thing, because Adele, you brought up that how she was in that frame of mind, and I found that frame of mind of hers very interesting too. But I think it must have been an almost, I think of it not so much as a Zen state of mind, but maybe similarly like an ecstatic state of mind that she's in at this point, because now there's nothing interfering with the one goal that she has. There's nothing else to think about. And so she just completely puts everything into that goal. And so, and I find it fascinating the way she objectively just separates everything else out. Even when she gets shot, she says, well, okay, I've been shot, I feel pain, but right, that's not really important to me right now, right? Because the one thing that I have to do, I thought that was a fascinating discussion.
Yeah. She seemed more interested whether her money was okay or not than whether she was shot.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. So she has every intention of getting out, though. So she's so I think that's interesting detail because she is not committing suicide. Is what I
No,
Kira never. That's who Kira is. Kira never gives up. Kira does everything with everything that she has to give it. She loved Leo with her full heart. She tries to escape with her full courage. She doesn't do anything by halves.
Right. Full focus to the last.
right, and she fully intends. She believes that she can make it. This isn't a fool's errand. This isn't some kind of it's not. It's thought through. It's not fantasy. She intends to make it, and I think that's important keep in mind also in terms of it being a happy ending is that she's not throwing herself away. She's not saying, I'm just going to run out into the woods and, who knows what will happen to me. I have every intention of being free.
Marilyn, what do you think the significance of the tree at the end is in the novel at the end?
Well, can you point me exactly to what you...
Well, yeah, it's the single tree with no leaves and exposed branches and hadn't collected any snow, and it was like the last thing that Kira sees before she dies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's
It's like,
very hopeful. It's always, if you look at a tree, as we all know, even in the winter, you see the buds that are on the tree
Right.
will emerge in spring. So there's that potential for life that she's seeing in
yeah, okay.
the tree.
I just thought that was interesting that was like the last thing that Kira saw.
Mm-hmm. Right. And and that tells you what she's looking at in her state of mind as well.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like I hate everybody. She's not saying that. She's not cursing the world. She's
I hate the asshole that shot me.
she doesn't even let him enter her consciousness.
Yeah.
It's all about her strength, her life, her courage, her not being touched by anything around her. She stands alone, exposed and open and
Yeah. Noble. She's just a beautiful person from beginning to end. There's no real arc to Kira's character. She's just always this beautiful person, and it's a great character. And I'm looking forward, as I said, to talking next week about the movie and about the actress who, as Charles has pointed out many times, is a very beautiful woman as well. And Leo and Andre, two great actors. So I hope everything goes well. If you're having problems, let's talk midweek. Either message me or post on the Facebook page. But otherwise, I look forward to talking to you next week. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Great session.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.